Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. Today we are going to be talking about in-place editing. There's been a new feature that has just come out in the new release that adds to the value of this already pretty cool feature, and we'll be going over it today. Specifically, we'll go through the what is it, which is basically how do you edit data in place in a list control, how to make it not conflict with your existing on-click events, how to configure it, add date pickers, and then we'll be taking a look at the new custom lookup function that you can use along with it. We're here, of course, to also answer questions. You could type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Quick AV test, if you don't mind. You should see the words in place editing on your screen and you should hear my voice. All good, wonderful. Thanks so much for letting me know that. So not a lot of PowerPoint here today. We're just going to dive right in and start using Alpha, and we're going to take a look at the Alpha Test Drive application, which you can download yourself on GitHub. Today we're going to be going back into the to-do list. And so let's take a look at the to-do list that comes in that we actually built, not that one, the one that we built a few weeks ago, about a month ago now, I guess. And our to-do list looks like this. It has a list of things to do, and you can edit something simply by clicking on it or tapping on it. So I'm going to click on it, and it opens up this detail view here. And then from there, you can just start making edits, or you can create a new record and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And then here we go. It goes ahead and updates it. So you can create new records. You can edit records. If you select a record, you can delete that record. And we showed you how all that worked in a different webinar. But when you're working, so this actually works pretty well on a phone. In fact, it works great on a phone. This metaphor of having a list that you tap on an item and have it open up a detail view is a really simple way on a phone to make sure that your keyboard doesn't overlay your fields and just to keep everything working smoothly. But if you have the full real estate like we do here on the web, on a PC or on a monitor, often what you would prefer to do is not go to a separate screen because that takes time and you have to orient yourself to the new screen. Instead, you just want to be able to edit specific data elements right in that list without ever leaving the screen. And that's what we call in-place editing. So we're going to go ahead today and take a look at an example of that. So I've built another UX component. This one is called to-do list example 2, maybe not. Let me find it here. Nope, to-do list example. Oh, that's today's, this one. I did it opposite. And if we take a look at this here in working preview, you will notice something interesting. If I click on it once, it brings me now into this editor view, and I can make changes to the data right here in the list. And I don't have to, when I click off, I don't have to go into a separate detail view. This is very convenient. When you set up something like this, though, you'll be, I'm going to show you how to set it up. You're going to have a couple of options for how fields can work, and I'm going to go through those fields. Two options here, for example, that I'm showing are the ability to put in a date picker. So, for example, I can click on that and a date picker comes up. And the ability to have, and this is a new feature, a custom lookup. This opens up a window that I've defined with controls in it that will be used to define the value. So if I click on that, you'll see up pops this little window. I'm going to choose a window called, I'm going to say, let's switch this to plants. I'm going to commit it. And you'll see that this has now been changed to plants. Now that's a pretty simple example. You probably wouldn't bother doing that. Why not just use the simple drop down here? But imagine, though, that you had a lot of different choices. Imagine those radio buttons had photos next to them to indicate which option was the right one for you. There's quite a lot of things. You also don't have to use drop downs or radio buttons. You can use slider controls. You can use all kinds of things. You could use a map control, for example. So there's a lot that you could do with a custom lookup. So today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how that is built. So I'm going to close this up and I'm going to make a duplicate of the one that we built last month. So let me duplicate that one and we'll call it number 3. All right, so let's open up to-do list example number 3. Sure. And let's get going. Right now, if I go into working previews, you'll see the list just operates like it normally does. So what we want to do is we want to turn on the feature for in-place editing. So I'm going to choose the list box, double click on it to open up its properties. And under list properties, one of the options here is in-place editing, allow in-place editing. I'm going to click the check mark there. And now here are the settings for in-place editing. I'm just going to click on those. And I'm not actually going to make any changes here because I find that the defaults for in-place editing usually work pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And it's going to tell me that it needs to change one of the properties on the list, the capture focus property. We'll just go ahead and let it do that. And we'll go into working preview again. Now, when I click on something, link, aha, what does it do? It still takes me over to this other screen. That isn't quite what I want. What I wanted to have happen was to have it go into in-place editing. So what's going on? Well, what's going on is in the list itself, there is a property, a JavaScript event, and we're going to go down to here. And that onSelect event, when I click on something in it, automatically runs this script called getDetails. And one thing that getDetails does is that it simply moves the it moves to the other page. So we don't want that to happen. So we can remove that, or we could redefine the way that we have on submit. The selector work for in-place editing. Let's do that one first. Let's make it so that, yeah, let's do that. We're going to do 2 things here. We're going to take this script out. So I'm just going to copy this into my clipboard. All right. And now on double click, we're going to change the way it works. In order to get to the detail view from now on, we're going to make you double click instead of single click. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste that here in get details. I'm going to click OK. And this should be working. If I click over here, double click should now be the way that I get to the next field. And double click is. So you'll see what happened there for a moment. I'm going to go into the list control again, and let's take a look at the way that in-place editing is configured. So we're going to go into list properties and in-place settings right here. And we're going to scroll down to show at home time. Whoops, I had that thing just a moment ago. Set focus, the row being edited. Oh, never mind. Got lost here. Capture focus. You know what? I think that's going to be fine because it does in fact work kind of the way we want it to if we didn't have to set anything. Let's go ahead and take a look again. So if I click here, now I double click once it's selected, and then I can go into the other one. So that's actually not bad. I kind of like the way that works. So we're going to keep that. But one thing I don't like about how it works when I click on the list is how I set my dates. So if you recall, when we set up our form the other time, we had a nice date picker in it so that we could choose our due date. But if I'm going to make an edit here, I don't have that option. I have to type in the date by hand. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to define this field with a date picker. And we do that back inside the list. So in the list, we're going to go into the field section. We're going to choose the due date field. And what we're going to do is choose the type of setting it is. And I think what I want to do is just type in place. Sorry, my bad. Oh, actually, could you guys hold on just for a second? I'll be right back. Oh, shoot. Oh, I got it. Okay. Awesome. Thanks very much for bearing with me. All right, now we're back. Okay, thanks. Let's go take a look now at one that I have prepared before. This one is the to-do list example 2. We're going to go and take a look how it was configured. So to-do list example 1. And if we take a look here at the list and in list properties, fields, create date, category. Just bear with me for 1 second. I'm just trying to find something real quick. That's not it. Let's take a look here. Okay, this property has in place editing. I think I'm looking at the wrong example. Am I? Yep. That's what's going on. I'm looking at the wrong UX component. Apologies. Let's go back in here. Come on. Apologies. We're going to go back into the list here. Make sure that we have in place editing turned on. In place editing settings. All of that looks good. Okay, all of that looks good. Now we're going to go into fields. We're going to choose our due date field, and I should be able to find my control type. Here we go, due date field. Oh, I apologize, guys. I thought I was better prepared for this. I actually just did this morning, and now I'm not finding what I built. So let me just close this up. Let me go to do example. This one here, which I built this morning, and we'll take a look at it in more detail. All right, so let's take a look at what we built. I built for you guys earlier. We're going to go into this list. And you're going to notice that when I select something here, I do in fact have a date selector. And I've got that date selector when I defined it in the list under fields. Aha, in place editing properties. That's what I was looking for the last 2 minutes. I really apologize for wasting your time here, but when you are using in-place editing, there's a section called in-place editing properties, and here is where you're finding them. I was trying to use the search control to look for in-place, and that was my error here. But for example, I chose a date picker. I could have chosen one of any of these sort of standard kinds here, but there's also a new one. So the date picker, that kind of makes sense to you, I'm sure, but there's another one called custom lookup. And I used custom lookup here when I was defining the category. So under control type, if you choose custom lookup, this is a new feature, and you go into control settings for this, you'll see it has some options. Now, as I had mentioned before, when you're using a custom lookup, what it does is it actually pops up a window that you have defined, that you've put controls in, and a window that you'll be using to set the values of that field. So I created a window called window 1. And let's go ahead and take a look at window 1. Here's window 1. Again, as a reminder, you can create a window just by adding what's called a container. And let's say you said container, and one of the container types is called a window. A window type doesn't have to be contained in your panel navigator or panel card. Windows really don't actually appear by themselves unless they're specifically called by JavaScript, like we're going to do here later on. Now in this window, I just have one control, and that control is called category lookup. And it is a type of radio button. And then in the choices, I made it very simple, like we did before, basically pathways, plants, and walkways. And I decided that the orientation vertical was what I wanted. And I turned off the field label above it because I didn't think it looked very good when we did it. I didn't think it was necessary. So everything else I pretty much left alone here on this window. So this is called window 1, and in it there is a radio button called category lookup. So let's go back into the list and see how those have been wired up together. We're going to go into fields, and we're going to choose category, and we're going to go down into control types where it said control settings. Clicked on that, and I said, here is the window that I wanted to use. I only had one, so that made it easy. Now, if I had quit here and said, okay, I would have gotten a little warning message from Alpha Anywhere telling me, hey, there are two other things that need to be set up when you're doing one of these custom controls. One is called onShow, and one is called onCommit. So what does onShow actually do? Well, if you think about it, when you first open up that window, it's going to have a field in it called category lookup. But that category lookup field doesn't have any data in it. You want to take the data from the list control and actually populate that so that what was in the list control appears in the window. In other words, you don't have it pop up with a choice blank if it's already been set. So there's a very simple piece of XBasic to do that. And in fact, when you click on that, I'll click on it again to show you on show. You just basically have to copy out this piece of JavaScript here and paste it in. Category lookup is the name of my field. If I didn't know what the field was when I pasted that in, we also make it really easy for you. Just put in a space here, right click, and you can just choose your field like I've done there. Okay, so that shows you the value once you've selected it. But after you have committed the value, you want to take that value and write it back to the list. So how do you do that? Well, you do that with also a one-liner here in JavaScript, actually a two-liner in JavaScript or multi-liner. But the easiest part here is this top part where it says result equals, and then dialog object get value. In that case, slider 1 was their example, but our field was called category lookup. So this is that, just ignore what's below it for now. This is all I needed to do then to set that value back into the list. The problem is that once it got back into the list, it would say, in fact, I'm going to remove this JavaScript and show you exactly what that issue was. So I put that into my clipboard. If I had put that in just like that, and I went into the list, and I decided to edit something and change the category, which I'm going to do. So we're going to click here, and we're going to choose, say, category. There's our pop-up. You'll notice the walkways is correctly selected because of that piece of JavaScript that we put in to set its value. But we're going to choose plants, and I'm going to commit it. And now take a look. It says plants. That is fine, like it's supposed to. But look, I've got this little orange triangle. For those of you who are used to list control and the way that it works regarding synchronization, that means that the data has been saved into the list, but it hasn't been saved back to the database. So how do you save it back to the database? You do some JavaScript, but I don't want to write that JavaScript myself. I already had a button here that was predefined that saves data and synchronizes it all in one go. And if I show you what's in that, it's basically all of this JavaScript here. It gets a pointer to the list, and then it saves the rows, and then it does the synchronization. And then the last part here in this button is called return to list. We don't actually need that last section there because we're already on the right place. So if I go here into my list, and then I go here into fields and I choose my category and I scroll down to control settings and I go to on commit, I'm going to go ahead and put that back in like it was. And now when I run it, if I make an edit to that category field, when I close the window, that data should be saved back. And we'll take a look. So let's go over to this one. Whoops, didn't mean to double click. And let's go to pathways. We'll set it to commit. See, it was orange, and now it's not. So it went ahead and it committed it there. So that's, you can actually do quite a lot with the window. I used a pretty simple example today with just simply a radio button. But like I said, you could get really fancy. You could have a very fancy type of graphic interface. You could build something really, really neat for doing those lookups. And it just gets called directly from the in-list editing. So let's take a look and see if there are any questions. That's kind of what I wanted to cover today. Can you show how the detail edit view is opened in a window? Yeah, sure, absolutely I can. Let's go ahead over here into working preview. In fact, let's use the original one. Let's use the one that you guys can, I'll save this, sure. But let's use the one that you guys can download from GitHub, the actual alpha test drive. You'll have a copy of the one called to-do list here. And I'll show you how we did that. When I go into working preview, so I can show you the behavior we're talking about, when I click on something here, it brings me over to the detail view. It slides me into another panel. So the way I did that was the list itself is contained in one panel card called, which I simply called panel card 1. And the detail view stuff is held in panel card 2. And I've placed them into a thing called a panel navigator, which unsurprisingly lets you navigate from one panel to the other. So when I clicked on that new button to create a new record, let's just show you how it's defined. I want it to do two things. The first thing actually is for it to move to that other panel, and the second thing is for it to create the record. But the thing you're interested in is how do you move there? How do you get there? How's it opened? And the way you do that is you create an action JavaScript using panel actions. So if you create, I'm going to add a new action JavaScript, and you type in panel, you will see that one of the selected things is called panel actions. In panel actions, you have a whole bunch of other ones. You can scroll, hide, dock, do all kinds of stuff. But what you really want to do is you want to set the active panel. You don't want to navigate. Navigate sounds like it's the right thing, but it's not the right thing. Navigate just means go forward or go back. So set active is where you choose a particular one. So you're going to say set active panel. And then the only thing you have to specify is the target name. Do I want to go to panel navigator, panel card 1 or panel card 2? It's as easy as that. If you want to, you can animate it. You don't have to animate it. If you do animate it, then it looks like it slides in from the right. Otherwise, it just appears instantly. I kind of like the animation, so I tend to use it. So we'll do that. All right, so hopefully that answered that question. Next up, do we still set defaults for new records in the field tabs of the list control? Yes, you can still set defaults. Let's take a look at the list control. fields. Due date. Default value, which for example, I could have it default to today's date, for example, in this field. That might make sense. So yes, you still use that. Even if you're using it with one of these new sort of custom lookups, if you want to use a default value, you can still specify it there. Let's see if we have any other questions. Doesn't appear so. Just to let you guys know a little bit earlier, we haven't fully committed to it, but we're looking perhaps at around November 20th for doing another one of our free Alpha Anywhere Developers Days. If you have something that you would like us to cover in particular, go ahead and send us an email to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, @alphasoftware.com. Hasn't been officially announced, but I just thought I'd let you guys know since you're good enough to show up to the webinars. Let's see what else we got here. That looks like it. Wonderful. Hey, wonderful. Look forward to seeing you at our next Alpha Software demo and Q&A webcast. Until then, take care and stay well. Bye-bye.